Hi, guys. This is the Work Your Money podcast with host Michelle Wong, and I have a great treat today. I have a awesome guest. His name is Greg Tomsky. Greg, hello. Welcome to our show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be on.
So, Greg, you are the CEO of Onerent, correct?
That is right.
And Greg, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. So I actually started out in kind of the real estate space back in 2013, 2014 while I was still in college. And I actually started working for kind of a real estate development firm that specialized in kind of multifamily projects. And that was my first kind of exposure to real estate and real estate development and property management. And I founded Onerent with my co-founders, a group of college students at Santa Clara University, myself, Rico, and Chuck. And that really kind of got us started in the space. And we founded that based on our experience of off-campus housing back in March of 2014. We recently made a little bit of a pivot more so into the kind of the full-stack property management business in kind of the 2015 period. But we founded it initially based on our experiences trying to create a simplified process for students to find their properties off campus. That's how we got into the space. And through that experience of kind of building our platform, we learned a lot about property management because a lot of property managers were using our software to house students in their properties. And kind of through that experience, we realized how little technology was really being used in the space of residential property management. We thought that, with the software we were building plus some logistics, we could really create something that's location agnostic and simplify the experience for both property owners and landlords.
Wow, that's a great platform. And I connected with Ray in regards to that. It was through social media platform, and I got more aware with what you're doing, and that's great. And you're based out in California, and your platform is being seen all over. And to know that you started from back in college to doing this now, that's great.
Yeah, it was definitely an exciting ride. When we first started, we operated out of my co-founder's garage. This was before we raised any money, so we actually started the business with just a few $1,000 of our own.
Yeah.
We built it up initially with our first base of customers that we just cold called to sign up onto the platform. So that was definitely how we got started right out of the garage days. It was an amazing journey going through that. We really kind of built the company from the ground up in that regard. It really helped us kind of understand our customers, which are mostly smaller investment property owners, people that have single family rentals and fourplexes, duplexes, kind of in the smaller investment range.
Yeah, you know what's amazing? A lot of the very successful companies always start from basement or garage or someplace very small, and it gets built out. And it's amazing from going from a small company and then gradually growing it into something bigger. And to me, I've always been interested to know where things get started. And a lot of the times it usually gets started in small areas like the garage or basement. And I find that amazing and yet fascinating.
Yeah, it's for us. I felt, and I think part of it is really you can really collaborate. In the early days of Onerent, it was just me and my co-founders and a few very early employees. And just being in the garage, we were all right next to each other. We were all very accessible. These small places where a lot of these early stage startups begin, it's really just about being collaborative. Because, you're adapting. Onerent, when we first started, was focused on just software and only student housing. Today, now we're doing kind of the whole spectrum of real estate services for residential properties. And we're servicing not just student housing, but all kind of residential. And a lot of those changes that we went through over the past 2 or 3 years were because we were very collaborative. We were always surrounded by each other, always very accessible to one another to kind of formulate our company's ideas and values.
Wow. And I also see that in your platform, you also have a blog area where people can post articles and so forth. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely, yeah. So with our blog, our real vision around that was to create a community for both really focused on our property owners to learn more about real estate and focused on kind of residential rentals, rental properties, and educate people. I mean, a lot of the first-time customers that we get don't have a lot of knowledge about renting their properties out. I mean, about 68% of our owners are first-timers. They've never, it's their first rental property or it's their only rental property, and they're kind of looking and searching for information about, what to lease, how should I go about renting my unit, what are the things I should look out for when I'm renting my unit, what are the challenges I may come across, and the blog was really designed to help us educate those property owners, as well as create kind of a community for our current property owners that are using our service. So that was really the vision around that, and also just even for our renters, we even have our renters that sometimes view and look at our blog to see rental trends and things like that as well.
Wow. And I see that I know that you're concentrated most in the West Coast because that's where you're based out of. But can you tell our listeners what other areas that you also work with or collaborate with other people with?
Yeah, so currently right now we're servicing the entire Bay Area from San Francisco, San Jose all the way up to Richmond, and we did launch in Seattle as well as Southern California and San Diego. Our goals are actually targeted at the top metro areas, so we are looking to expand into new locations over the next year. Some of these locations include areas like Boston, New York, Washington, D.C., really top metro areas where there's a lot of renter turnover for us to enter into a market. So we haven't initiated those launches quite yet, but our vision at Onerent is really to be a national brand in kind of the residential management space. And right now we're currently on the West Coast with our eyes on the nation.
Yeah, I see that. And the West Coast, there's a lot of things going on in the real estate market. There's a lot of things moving along, and particularly trending in California. I was there back in, when was it? March. I was there. I was in particularly the Los Angeles and Santa Barbara area. And when I was in Santa Barbara in particular, I saw a lot of development going on. I saw a lot of spaces being rented regarding residential, like apartments, and also commercial office space and things like that. So things are like really moving along. It's like California has a direct, I wouldn't say competition, but it's kind of like in the same level as New York. There's a lot of things going on in the California market.
Absolutely, there definitely is, and especially in kind of the Bay Area. I mean, the Bay Area has one of the highest rents in the nation, and it's definitely scaling across these different markets. It's really micro markets in the Bay Area. There's a lot of micro markets. I don't have enough knowledge on New York, but I'm assuming that as such a big geographical area, it's very similar in terms of having different micro markets. Like from San Francisco down to San Jose, these rental markets are very different, but they're all starting to scale up.
Yes.
We see some rents kind of topping off in some areas like San Francisco, but also in other areas in the South Bay, we see rents rising as there's a lot more development going on in kind of the South Bay, for example. We're seeing a lot of new tech companies come into areas like San Jose in the South Bay, and it's definitely starting to drive more and more demand. And there is a lot of development. I mean, there is a supply shortage for the Bay Area, for sure, and there's definitely a lot of rental demand. And what we're seeing, what's unique for our product is we do a lot of single family, and a lot of single family rentals, and we're seeing a high demand for that product in the marketplace. A lot of people are looking to rent single family homes, and there's a lot of property owners that are converting their once home that they lived in into a rental property. So we're definitely seeing growth in that marketplace.
Yeah.
in this space.
I totally agree. California, see, this is how I see things. Real estate markets are always going to be very similar. It doesn't matter if you're in the East Coast or the West Coast. So San Francisco, I've been hearing a lot San Francisco lately. I have a few friends that live in San Francisco. It is a little bit pricey, but it's a beautiful area. There's a lot going on in that particular area, apart from other sections of California. But it is very similar to the New York market. In a sense, I would say that San Francisco would be maybe close to Brooklyn. I would say the equivalent of what the Brooklyn market is, depending on what area of San Francisco you're residing at. But I do believe that the markets are very similar in bi-coastal. So whatever you find in the East Coast, you'll find something similar on the West Coast, and so forth.
Absolutely. Definitely. And like I was saying earlier, I mean, it's really interesting to see not only kind of the fluctuations in rent, but also just the type of housing. Like I was saying earlier, like single family has been really a growing trend in kind of the rental space. Mm-hmm. And we see it's only about 30, surprisingly, like some people don't realize that like 30% of the rentals in the U.S. are kind of single family detached homes. And it's a huge portion of the marketplace. Mm-hmm. So I think some people are surprised by that, and it's actually definitely increasing. I mean, single-family home rentals are increasing faster than multifamily. So it's definitely interesting things going on in the marketplace right now.
Okay. And Greg, tell us a little bit of your journey when it came to, getting started with your company. Was it an easy transition? Was it a little bit difficult? The reason why I ask is because whenever anybody starts a company, you'll always have some type of experience. Some of them can be good. Some of them can be not so good. Some of them can be a little challenging, and so I just wanted to get your insight as to how the transition was when you were starting this company.
Absolutely, definitely. I mean, there are definitely lots of challenges. It would probably take me hours and days to go through all the different challenges that we had as we built Onerent. But I mean, some of the core things that we had really in the early days, like in that really starting transition, was centered around kind of product focus and customer focus, like who's our customer, what's our niche, and what product are we providing to that customer. And that was really the focus in our early days, because real estate is such a big field. Like there's just so many dynamics, so many sectors. I mean, there's multifamily, there's single family, there's property investors, there's single family property owners. There's just so many different concepts, and then there's property management, sales. Real estate is just such a huge industry, and property management in itself has many different segments. So in the early days of Onerent, one of our biggest challenges was really focusing down on who our customer type was. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the case with like a lot of startups, especially in the early days. It's really kind of identifying who your customer profile is, and being able to market your product directly to that customer and finding where that customer is. So I would say in the early days, that was one of our biggest challenges, is really honing in on that. Mm-hmm. And finding out who that was. And another big thing that we did was making sure, I mean, when we our first round of financing came in the end of 2014 from a group of angel investors, a group of former Google and current Google executives. And being one of the big things was unique for us was we had a group of investors that were very aligned with our vision. And I think that's very important. I think that's some of the challenges we had in the very early days, is finding an investor that's aligned with your vision of the company, and then also understands that some of those things will change when you're at that stage, because you're constantly adapting your product, refining it, you're constantly trying to identify who that customer is. And in the early days, it's really hard to make sure your investors are aligned with that, because you're just constantly on the move. So I think a lot of those challenges that we had in the early days were really about identifying those items.
Okay. I would say that you were very fortunate that you had these investors that were on the same, they saw eye to eye with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I mean, my advice to, I meet so many different entrepreneurs because we're in the Bay Area and we try to do as many partnerships as we can with different companies. And my biggest advice to a lot of these like early stage companies is, I mean, you want to try, like, the alignment with investors is important. And, you know, the sooner you bring on investors, the harder sometimes that can be. So, I mean, I always advise them to try to get as far as they can before they start doing that, because it prevents you from adapting quickly. Like I talked earlier about, I mean, a startup survives and you can build a company as long as you can adapt and move quickly in the early days. That's so important to be able to build out your company. And once you start bringing on money, that becomes harder naturally because you have more people you're engaging with, you have more people you're seeking approval from. So in the early days, I mean, you've really got to try your hardest to build out as far as you can, identify your customer, identify what your product is before you start looking for money. Because, you know, I always meet entrepreneurs who are like, oh, how did you raise your first dollar? And that's always sometimes their first question. And it's like, oh, you don't want to ask that question yet. You really want to try to get as far along as you can before you start bringing in more people to your company.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you have to have your vision executed and have the presentation in place in order for those people that are going to invest really see clearly what you're trying to do and where you want to go. And until you really have that formulated and finalized, sometimes it can be a little bit tricky because some of these investors, I don't know how it is in California, but in New York, they ask multiple questions. They want to invest in something, but they'll ask you a lot of questions in regards to, you know, how is this business going to attract clients? How is it going to affect the future clients or the public? How is it that you're going to gain revenue from it? These are just like general questions that they will ask overall. So you always have to have that overall plan of how everything is going to be formulated and how everything is going to be structured in order to do that presentation where you can answer those questions.
Absolutely. And a lot of it, I mean, like I was saying earlier, it's all about that alignment. And if you bring on an investor who doesn't fully understand where you are in that phase of discovering who your core customer is, where they are in the niche in the market that your product fits, if you're not honest with that investor, you get unaligned with them very quickly because they feel like, oh, wow, I already invested in a company that knows who their customer base is, they know their product, and then, you know, 4 months into that investment, they discover that that's not fully the case. So, I mean, and that's why I say, like, those first investors that you bring onto your company, it's very important that they understand where you are in that process and they know that you're in a phase of discovery and you're constantly changing your product and finding that niche, especially for the early stage.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, you mentioned that you also have a few business partners as well. How many are you altogether? How many business partners do you have altogether in this company?
In terms of our founders, you mean?
Yes.
There's 3 founders. So there's myself, and then my co-founder, Chuck Hadler, and Rico Mock.
Okay.
We all were at Santa Clara University together, actually. Chuck was a marketing major, and Rico was an information management systems major. Myself, a finance major, and we all actually were in the same business fraternity at Santa Clara, AKSI. That's how we actually met initially. And yeah.
Okay. Now I wanted to ask a question because I have 2 business partners as well. One of them is in hedge funds, and the other one, he's more concentrated in real estate. Actually, he's doing things more independently with real estate as to I'm doing things more on the media sector of things. what I wanted to ask you is each person handling something individually within the company, and also do you find it easy working with other people within the company or independently?
Absolutely, yeah. So a few points to that. We definitely work well together, and I think part of that is because we're honest with each other.
Mm-hmm.
When I first got into this, I had an advisor who he was a serial entrepreneur and did a couple of different startups. Right before I started Onerent with my two co-founders, he told me, "Hey, if these are guys you're going to start with, you need to be comfortable enough to yell at them, scream at them, fight with them,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to."
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the unique things that I think we had together from the very early stages is
Mm-hmm.
we were able to do that, and that allowed us to make decisions and execute well over that time. And for us, we have a very flat organization in terms of our tasks. I mean, we always assist with each other. We have our focuses. I'm more focused on the business development, financing, and partnership end. Chuck's on the marketing side and sales, and Rico's on kind of operations and technology.
Mm-hmm.
So we have our kind of respective focuses that we know and we're good at.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we're always somewhat involved with each other's segments as well. And I think that's the case with most startups. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everyone wears many hats in a startup. That's just the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in kind of an organization where you're developing and constantly refining what you're doing. So I think for us, it's always been about being direct with each other, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's why we've had a really good working relationship as we've built Onerent, is because we've never let things boil over. We've always been direct, and we always are comfortable with each other being a part of everyone's kind of respective focus.
Yeah, I totally agree. It comes to the point that you guys become family, and for me, I don't know how it is with you, but for me, having them both is like having a younger brother and having an older brother. And we talk almost daily. If I don't, I talk to one a little bit more frequent than the other one. Like we talk on a daily. Sometimes we meet for lunch and we start talking about things that needs to be done or what's going on and following up. And you have to be honest with the people that you're in business with, because those are the people that are going to take you to where you want to go. So if you're not if you're not coexisting with that person and really have each other's back, or not seeing things in the same level, it's not going to work. It's always going to be friction. And I'm very fortunate that I can have my moments. Like we fight like family. We have our moments that sometimes we don't see eye to eye in certain things, but at the end of the day, we do have that discussion. We'll have our argument, but then it's like we agree to disagree, and everything is good again, because not everything can always be in agreement all the time. Sometimes you have to have that other person that might see things a little bit differently than you to kind of give you that perspective, so that you can see that in their own perspective, so that you can also, because this is the other thing too. When you're doing something, you have to take into consideration that this is for the masses. This is for the public. You have to always look at every angle and see how that is going to affect the other people, because not everybody's going to see things the same. So having a business partner that might be a little bit opposite of you, it could be good as well, where they can see things in a different perspective, so that it makes you think of the other angles that might affect the other side of the clients or the public. And I'm very fortunate to have two individuals that have different personalities. We all have the same, we want the same outcome, but they have different personalities, and it kind of helps me find my balance in a sense. and also to find my accountability, because now I have accountability partners where they help me kind of say, okay, did you get this done, or is this completed? And then I can do the same thing with them. And that kind of ties everything together to have that going smoothly. And there's not all those complications as other companies that I've seen have,
Right. No, definitely. I mean, I think that, like you kind of said, I mean, if you're not open to each other and you're not willing to work with each other, it's hard to really have an efficient company, because if you can't really challenge each other in your business, you're not going to solve problems quickly, and that's what it's all about. It's all about solving problems quickly and acting on them. And if you're not able to confront that person, and you're not able to be open with that person, especially in a business arena, you'll never be able to get things done. And I think being able to really be efficient and execute well is dependent on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Greg, I have another question for you. What do you recall has been a pitfall for you, and what has been the highlight for you in regards overall in regards to starting the company and where you are now?
Absolutely, yeah. So for us, I'd say the biggest pitfall that we had was in our first transition, actually. Mm-hmm. It was in the very early days when we first started Onerent, and that was when we were very focused on college housing. Mm-hmm. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, like the challenges of identifying your customer and your product. And this was right before we made the pivot to kind of offer the full spectrum of property management services and get into pretty much just generic residential management. So right before that, we had this vision and dream that we could create this software for student housing across multiple campuses, and that was that's how Onerent originally got started. And but one thing we missed is we really didn't identify or understand our customer well enough to know that every college campus is significantly different. Mm-hmm. In terms of the owner dynamic, in terms of the property type, in terms of students. And we went to this event in Las Vegas for kind of student housing across the nation. And we went to this event. We had a table set up, and we were just kind of talking and meeting with all these different rental property owners across the nation around college campuses. And we realized how wrong we were, mm-hmm. Because we just made assumptions on the customer without mm-hmm. actually going out there and meeting and understanding. And we took what we learned around one college campus, which was our university, Santa Clara, and we were applying it to all these other colleges. Mm-hmm. And it was just so different. And that was a big pitfall for us and a big mistake for us. And it really, on top of just seeing the opportunity of property management, also we realized that just focusing on college campuses wasn't the way to really grow the business. So that was a big, definitely a pitfall, but we were able to come out of it because we understood our mistake and got exposed to the different customer types. But in terms of the biggest bright side that we have, I think a lot of that had to do with what came out of that. Mm-hmm. So as we started getting into this newer space, and we made that pivot into kind of full service management and applying our technology to really change the rental management space, we realized how much opportunity there was with these smaller property owners that never had any experience with a property manager. 70% of our owners have never used a residential management service before, mm-hmm. And we're their first experience with something like that. Mm-hmm. And we didn't see that when we first came into the space. We didn't expect that. We thought we were going to get all these people from old traditional managers, brick and mortar businesses, and they would come to our service. But what ended up happening is we got so many customers that just never had an experience with a residential property manager before. And this is unique. This is special because for us, we realized that we could really be the first experience for them in terms of a process and experience in this kind of space. And we realized how different we could be from a traditional manager because of that. Because we were their first exposure of how this process should be. So that was definitely a bright side, and that quickly kind of scaled and allowed us to focus and made us realize where our customer segment was, where our niche was, who we were targeting, and really helped us continue to build the business.
Well, I can say this. Sometimes through our pitfalls, just like you said, we do learn from it. I've seen many successful people that have businesses do very well, and they have their moments where they've made a little hiccups here and there. They've made mistakes, but through those mistakes is where you actually learn, and then you from that learning you can then have other ways of trying to move your business forward. And so I always like to ask people that, because I find what's very interesting about that is that those trivial pitfalls that people have are usually the same pitfalls that drives them into, or they propel them into what makes them successful afterwards, because it's like a trial and error thing. For some, you won't know anything until you actually make those mistakes. And those really successful people, that's what they do. They just keep going through trial, and every error that they have, they learn from it, and then they kind of adapt from that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, in terms of advice for people starting out in the space, it's really about not giving up and not being afraid to fail. I mean, I think everyone says that, but I think a lot of entrepreneurs forget that when they're in the trenches. And I think sometimes they lose sight of the kind of the bigger picture. And as long as they're determined to not give up, willing to adapt, open to change when needed, they'll succeed. And it might be nothing like you started in the beginning. I mean, it's going to change just like we changed, but you can succeed if you don't give up. And I think sometimes entrepreneurs are afraid or because they're uncertain about the product they created in the beginning and how it's going to change today. I think that's sometimes the biggest fear. It's not so much the fear of failing, but sometimes in the early days, an entrepreneur may be fearing like how their product's going to change into something that they completely didn't think it would. But I think you just really need to get over that and to reach your success. And it's really all about just being able to adapt and be open to failure, but also be open to then change into something new. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to fail forward, than not fail at all. It's the most important thing is really to go out and take a risk. If you truly believe in yourself, you have to go out and implement what your thoughts are. Because you can analyze things, you can think about it, and it's not the same thing as actually taking action and executing it. And it's like I said before, you can make mistakes, but through those mistakes, you'll learn. And to me, that's the only way that you can grow as an individual within your business, is to constantly go out and do things. And sometimes you might do something correctly the first time, but it might not be the same result the second time. And and again, you learn from that, and then you'll say, okay, what do I need to do differently in order to now keep pushing this forward? So you're absolutely right. I truly believe that you have to go out and really take the initiative, take action. Do not be afraid to take risks. Do not be afraid to make mistakes, because everything that you do in life is not 100% perfect. You're always going to have obstacles. You're going to have, you're going to have a few mistakes that you're going to make. There's so many factors that come into place, but you have to learn to adapt to it and just keep moving. It's just about the momentum and just continuously moving.
Right, and that's a great point. I mean, it's so true that you kind of mentioned earlier, just like how sometimes the things you do now may succeed, but they won't succeed later. And I really take that out as about experience. I mean, you can read all the books you want, you can kind of research as much as you can, but I mean, it's not going to prevent you from making mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. It's almost, you need to make mistakes, because if you don't make mistakes, then you're never going to learn, you're never going to improve your product. and it's never going to really have a good impact on your customer. And it's experience is a great thing, but also realize that you're writing your own book here, and most of the time, if you're really doing something new, there's always something that's going to change the direction of your company. You're never going to have the perfect path. It's never going to have any issues. There's always going to be things that you're going to be refining and perfecting. And experience is important. It helps you, but don't try to plan out your whole path just based off of someone else.
Oh yeah.
Really be focused on your own path.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. I believe that each one of us has our own journey. And just because for one person it worked out a certain way doesn't necessarily mean it'll work out the same way for you. Each person has something within them that is going to create their own path. So your path and what you did with your company and how you're going forward it's not going to be the same for me because of what I'm trying to do elsewhere. So it's like the results are going to be different. And some people don't seem to comprehend that when you're going out to do something as an entrepreneur, you're setting standards for yourself. You're going out creating opportunities for yourself. You're going out and taking risk. You're going out taking action. You're going out and making connections with other people to establish yourself in the public. And that the way you go about it is going to be different and the results are going to be different. And that's where people have to take into consideration that each one of us is going to have a different outcome because of the way that we're approaching it. And the other thing that I also agree with you on is, yes, some people like to read a lot. I love to read, but I also like to apply what I read, or I apply some kind of action and execute what I just learned. Because you can have all the knowledge, and books that are out there is just a theory. You can't go by the books because they might say that this might be a theoretical outcome, but it's not the reality of what the outcome can be. So you have to also take that in consideration that, yeah, you can have those books to help you out, but it doesn't necessarily mean that because of what is said in that book is going to be the same results that you're going to have. And, you have to balance out what you have as knowledge, but also go out and actually implement it and take action on it.
Great. It's really all about understanding that context. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, you could read the book, you can get definitely a lot of learning items, but before you apply those into your business and et cetera, you need to understand the context of what those things came from in that whatever you're reading or whoever you're hearing it from before you apply it to yourself. Because the context is what's most important, and your business context is going to be different than anyone else's. So it's always about really deeply understanding that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Greg, I'm going to do a little bit of improv here. I'm going to ask you a question. And, you were telling me about college and so forth and everything. Can I ask you, how old you are?
Absolutely. I am 23. 23,
okay. No, there's nothing bad with that. I just wanted to ask because you sound young, and that's a good thing. And I'm basically, as of late, have been around a lot of millennials, and you guys are really teaching other generations how to go about starting up businesses, taking risk, and I commend you for that. I'm learning a little bit more about technology every time that I speak to someone that isn't an entrepreneur doing their own thing. And I just find it amazing how there are more, from what I've seen, more entrepreneurs that are in their 20s going out and really taking that taking the advantage of going out and doing something and creating their own. So that's why I wanted to ask, how old you were and stuff. Cause
Yeah, definitely. I mean, technology has really made it really allows people like myself and other millennials and even younger people in college to really start companies, because it's just made it a lot easier. I mean, there's just so much opportunity out there that can be done and achieved because of technology. There's so many industries that have so little technology being used in them right now. Mm-hmm. There's just so much opportunity. And I think at this stage, I mean, there's a lot of people. Like I initially, I didn't even finish my full college career when we started Onerent. I actually dropped out my junior year to focus on this full time with my co-founders. Yeah. And I think we're seeing that with a lot of people that are interested in building companies and entrepreneurs that look an opportunity exists here, and I'm going to pursue it. And I think technology has really been a huge driver for that, because it's really showed us that it can be done, and you don't necessarily need to build all your education through traditional schooling. You can learn a whole lot. Yeah. As an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. There's no wrong way. I see, I'll give you an example. A couple of weeks ago, I had a open discussion with a couple of people that are very successful as entrepreneurs. I had one, he's been on a couple of times. He specializes in social media, advertising and marketing. He has his own company. He started out from college. He's only 20 years old. He just turned 20. And when I had him the first time, he was working on an account on one of his major clients is a guy that basically helped move forward this real estate platform called Property Shark. And he came in and he was, we were talking. And I said, hey, come back. Let's get a little bit more familiar with you, because, being 19, he was 19 at the time. I says, being 19 and doing this is awesome. This is exactly what I'm trying to say. There's no thing out there that says that you're too young or too old to start a business. There's nothing in there that says that you have to have a certain age or you have to have a certain education or a degree or anything like that. No, it's not. And you want to know something else? I've noticed that the ones that really don't have like a college education, and I'm not, scaling it back, but the ones that go and pursue their passion, they pursue their dreams, those are the ones that are fulfilling it. Those are the ones that are taking the action. Those are the ones that are being successful. So again, is like I said before, the younger generation is really taking that initiative and being the free thinkers, being the ones that are really taking that action to go forward and establishing something for themselves. And, it wasn't the same thing years ago. Now there's different opinions on how people see things in regards to being an entrepreneur. Some people say it's easier now. Some people say it was, easier back then because there was not a lot of competition. I think that there is more opportunity now because technology is in place. So it does make it easier for people to really go out there and have something of their own, have their own business and be successful at it. It is easier because technology has made it easier for everyone in place.
Absolutely. It's become so much more accessible. And I think, some people, it's not made for everybody. I mean, you got to be comfortable with the failure. You got to be comfortable with the stress. I mean, there's definitely a lot of hard work. You're working 24/7. There's never a day where you don't have something to do, or never a minute. But I mean, if you are comfortable with that, if you really are passionate about something, a change that you want to make in whatever industry or field it is, it's really an exciting journey to take. And I think, those that are out there that are doing it, you definitely have to respect them and respect entrepreneurs that are willing to take that risk.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I have a lot of respect for those people that are going out and really creating something for themselves. And it's not just creating something for themselves, but they're also helping other people out as well. Because every time that you go and create a business or a company, your your train of thought is really go helping other individuals out. You're creating other um, job opportunities for those people that are coming in under your company. You're going and helping out with other people that are trying to uh, you know look for something. So you're basically creating a solution to the problem. That's the bottom.
Exactly.
That's
It's all about,
hmm
yeah. I mean, it's all about creating value, like creating value in people's lives, like whatever product you're doing. If you're not creating value,
hmm
then you're in the wrong space or you have the wrong product. And sometimes it's hard. I mean, sometimes it can be kind of hard to determine how much value you're creating with a customer, like in the very, very early days of your company. Like you're
hmm
trying to figure out, like, well, how is my product creating value, or where do I create value? And
hmm
for us, it was we had a little bit of, I mean, for a lot of entrepreneurs, most of the time you're starting a company based on your own experience, and for us it was kind of the same thing. We had a terrible rental experience, and that's how we kind of got into the space. But
hmm
when you're first building that company, sometimes it can be hard to determine where you're creating value better than others and your competition.
Oh,
So it's definitely something you always have to be aware of. You always have to constantly reiterate and build upon. So that's definitely something to watch out for.
oh yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. But you're one of the examples of what I was stating before in a couple of my discussions previously in the podcast, where I see the younger generation taking a more initiative. There are some people that like to make judgment on people that are younger because they're like, oh, they don't have the experience and this and that. You can't go by that because to me, you can't go by a number, someone's age, because that person might have a lot of experience. They might have a lot of knowledge to go behind it. So to me, I listen to someone that is younger than me because they might have some insight that I, might not be aware of. And so that's one of the things that I always point out to people, that you can't go by that. Just like you can't go by someone that is a little bit older and they're trying to start a business, or they have a business. You can't do that either, because there is no age limitation of how young or how old you can be to have a business and be successful at it as well. There's quite a
Absolutely.
quite a few people that that are on both ends of the spectrum. But I do look up to the younger generation, only because I see that there's more initiative there. They're not afraid to really go out and create something for themselves. And the other thing you have to also bear in mind that, and I say this all the time, having a business or being an entrepreneur is not so glamorous behind the scenes. There's some people that make it seem like it's so easy, and it's not. There's a lot of things that you have to do in the back end on a day to day before it really picks up and people see it, and they'll say, wow, oh, how did you do this? And it might look easy on the, like in the front end and through the public, but people don't see all the sacrifices and everything else you have to do on the back end on the day to day. And that's one of the other reasons why I like to ask people on my show what goes on a day to day, because some people don't see it. And I like my guests to really come from within and just say how it is in reality, so that people can see, hey, if you're going to do this, you have to do this correctly. If you're going to do this, you're going to have to bear in mind the sacrifices you have to do, the time, energy, and effort, and possibly money to put into getting a very successful business up and running.
Exactly, and it's so true. I mean, so many people like romanticize the startup life and, building a company and it's hard. I mean, yes, there are great rewarding things about it. Like there's no doubt there's immense reward you get from what you learn and from the experiences you obtain, and all kinds of different things. But it's hard. It definitely is. I mean, there's constantly things to do. There's constant iteration. You're dealing with building a company, which means you're developing and building relationships with your team, and you have to maintain those. Mm-hmm. You have customers, which at an early stage company you always have to stay in tune with to understand their experience and the product. And it only gets harder as you grow. I mean, it only gets harder as you grow, and it only gets harder as you build your business. And it's all rewarding, it's all amazing, and it's all like great things that you get out of it. But it's hard. It's not meant for everyone. But I mean, if you're willing to take that risk, you're not afraid of failure because you will fail. Like we said earlier, it's definitely something that I recommend to anyone that's willing to go about it. And I mean, you have people like the first people you attract in building your company, your co-founders, your first employees. I mean, a startup in the early days is really about those people. It's even less so about the product and the customer. It's really about those people because your product's going to change and your customers in the very early days, unless you're just focusing on building something in kind of the hardware space or et cetera. But for the most part, like it's really about those first people that build your company because your product's going to change. Your business model is going to change. But you have to have the people in that group, in that first group, that are willing to do that with you, and have confidence in you, and also have the ability to be able to adapt, because you will have to.
Oh yeah, I totally agree on that.
That's big.
Yeah.
It's all about that first group. Those first people in the early stage of your company are so important, and that's definitely a deciding factor for your success, more so than the product in the customer you're initially servicing.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. You have to, when you're doing this, you have to take into consideration the impact that you'll have on people's lives, the people that are going to be working with you, the people out in the public that you're trying to cater to. There's a lot of elements that you have to take into consideration when you're starting out a company. You have to, you really have to think about everything overall. And that's just my thing, that it is a rewarding, when you see the end results, you see how you touch other people's lives, you see how people come up to you and they thank you for the things that you're doing. It's a great feeling. It's rewarding all in itself, more so than the money itself. For me anyway, I get more gratification knowing that I'm helping other people, and those people are thanking me to helping them out, than me trying to get the money. Like, the money will be there, but the emotions and everything else that fall into place, those are not replaceable than the value itself. If you understand what I mean.
Absolutely. No, it definitely is. I mean, if you go straight into it solely focused on the money, you'll never be able to get over the first hurdles.
Yeah.
Because the first hurdles have nothing to do with the money. I mean, it really is about the team. It's really about your initial customer set. I mean, the money will come. It's going to follow you if you have the right mindset and you are able to build your business. But if you go into it solely focused on that, it's really hard to create value and to build the right team.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's always there. I mean, money is always there. It's in the back of the mind of the entrepreneur, how you build that economic value with your company. But in the early days, it's about that team, the people you bring to the table.
Oh yeah.
Not so much the money you start out with.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. So Greg, we're coming very close to the end of the show. I want to know, for our listeners out there, where can they find you?
Absolutely. You could find us at www.onerent.co. .co, and that's where you can get a free rent estimate, and property owners can take a look at our services that we offer in the areas that we're currently in.
Okay. Is there?
And you can also find our blog through there as well.
Okay. Is there any like social media that you also want to have people like connect with you, or it's just primarily through your website?
Yep, you can find us through the website. We are on Facebook, and you can definitely find us on there as well. If you're looking for more details, we do post a lot of our blogs. If you do follow us on Facebook as well, you can see our blogs through that channel too.
Okay, awesome. And guys, for all of you out there who want to keep following us on the Work Your Money podcast, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. It would be the Work Your Money or Work Your Money podcast. You can also find us on our website, workyourmoney.net. And we also have YouTube, and that's under Work Your Money podcast. So, Greg, thank you for being on the show. It was great to have this conversation with you and get a little bit more insight on what you're doing. Anything else you want to share with our listeners out there? Any maybe project you have coming up or anything in the works in the future?
Thank you, Michelle, again for having me on the show. And in terms of other things to kind of share with the audience, don't be afraid to go out and start your own things. And in terms of new things that we'll be doing in the near future, we're definitely focused on being in new markets. And if you have a market that you're in that we're not currently servicing, we'd love to hear about it. Love to hear about your interest in our product, which will help us with our expansion. So those are definitely the main focuses.
Okay, guys, so check out Onerent. Greg, again, thank you for being on the show. Until the next time, this is the Work Your Money podcast. I bid everybody a good evening. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Michelle.